$50,000 if you can sing in that language? The millionaire mocked, but the poor cleaner shocked everyone when her voice revealed an unimaginable past. It was just another day of invisibility for Maria Lopez. For 5 years, her calloused hands had polished the imported Italian marble of the Sterling Manor in Greenwich, Connecticut. At 32, her slender body carried the marks of a difficult life. Dark skin weathered by years of double shifts, tired eyes that rarely lifted above the level of the floors she waxed daily. No one truly saw her. Maria was merely a shadow gliding between Czech crystal and Persian rugs, armed with her buckets and cleaning supplies. A necessary presence, but one that was expected to remain unnoticed. What no one in that opulent estate knew was that the hands now holding cleaning products had once held sheet music and microphones. Before her life fell apart, Maria had been a music teacher at the Beacon Community Center and School in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, where she also directed a youth choir acclaimed for local performances. The catastrophe came in layers. First, the sudden closure of the school due to lack of city funding. Then, the diagnosis of advanced cancer for her mother, Donna Elena, generating astronomical medical debts. Finally, the premature death of her husband, Carlos, who was hit by a bus on his way to his night job. In less than 2 years, Maria, widowed at 27, found herself alone with 2 young children, Leo, 7, and Sophia, 5, and a mountain of debt. Music went silent in her life. The need for survival pushed her into the only job she could secure, cleaning the massive estate of tycoon Robert Sterling III. On that particular March morning, the manor was in a frenzy. Robert Sterling, the owner of the Sterling Group, one of the country's largest real estate development firms, was turning 50. The promised party was set to be a grand affair, attended by CEOs, politicians, and celebrities. Especially important were the Korean investors who had recently sealed a multi-million-dollar partnership with the Sterling Group. "Maria, these windows still have streaks. Redo them immediately." The sharp voice of Ms. Davies, the head housekeeper, echoed through the main hall. "Mr. Sterling wants everything impeccable for tonight. Our Korean guests are extremely particular." "Yes, ma'am," Maria responded mechanically, restarting the job she had already done twice. Hours later, discreetly organizing stemware at the sidebar during the party, Maria observed her boss in his element. Robert Sterling was the embodiment of power. Tall, meticulously groomed gray hair, a custom-tailored Italian suit. His booming laugh dominated any room, as did his intimidating presence. What few knew was that behind that facade of unshakable success lay a man obsessed with proving his worth. Abandoned as a baby at St. Luke's Hospital and later adopted by a wealthy, bicultural family, his adoptive father American, his mother Korean, Robert grew up determined never to feel disposable again. He built a real estate empire based on ruthless ambition and, often, morally questionable decisions. At midnight, the party was at its peak. French champagne flowed freely, while a Korean band specially hired for the occasion played traditional and contemporary music to impress the foreign investors. Robert, visibly intoxicated, displayed his cruelest side, the one employees feared most. "Look at this," he exclaimed, stopping 2 young waiters. "This bottle of Cristal costs more than you 2 make in an entire year combined. Isn't that fascinating?" The waiters offered forced smiles while guests chuckled nervously. It was then that Robert spotted Maria passing silently, collecting empty glasses. "Hey you, the cleaner," he called loudly. "Come here a moment. I want to show my friends something." Silence gradually fell as Maria approached, her bucket still in hand, her face carefully neutral after years of practice at showing no emotion while working. $50,000. His voice cut through the elegant chatter. "I'll pay $50,000 if this employee can sing a single song in that language." He pointed toward the Korean musicians who had stopped playing, clearly uncomfortable. Laughter echoed through the hall, some genuine, others nervous and forced. "It's impossible, obviously," Robert continued, savoring the moment. "But it would be entertaining to watch the attempt. Wouldn't it, gentlemen?" The Korean businessmen exchanged uneasy glances. One of them, Mr. Park, the oldest and most respected, visibly frowned in disapproval. Maria remained motionless, the bucket still clutched in her hands. 5 years of silent humiliations. 5 years of pretending not to exist. Something shifted in her eyes, a spark that hadn't appeared in a long time. "May I choose the song?" Her voice was steady, without a trace of the expected submission. The question surprised Robert, who anticipated fear or embarrassed retreat. "Of course," he replied with a burst of laughter, raising a glass in a toast to his own cruelty. "Choose whatever you like. The 50,000 is yours, if you succeed." An expectant silence gripped the ballroom as Maria placed the bucket on the floor. For a moment, she closed her eyes, as if searching for something deeply guarded within herself. When she opened them again, her posture had subtly changed. Shoulders slightly straighter, gaze direct, breathing controlled as only trained musicians know how. Then she began to sing. The transformation was instant and shocking. The voice that emerged was not the timid voice everyone expected. It was a crystal-clear voice, technically perfect, with flawless vocal control that filled every inch of the luxurious hall. And even more surprising, the Korean words flowed naturally, with authentic pronunciation and genuine emotion. It was Jongseon Ararang, an ancient, melancholic Korean folk song, laden with cultural meaning. The melody spoke of separation, hope, and reunion. The buzz ceased completely. Glasses froze midair between tables and lips. The Korean band themselves stared in absolute astonishment. But what happened next, no one could have predicted. Robert Sterling's face completely drained of color. His eyes widened, fixed on Maria as if he were seeing a ghost. His hands began to visibly tremble. Lou, knocking his champagne flute onto the Italian marble floor. That song. That exact melody. It was the one his adoptive Korean mother used to sing to him when he was just 3, before she passed away prematurely due to a heart condition. A memory he kept locked away, almost forgotten, of a time when he truly felt loved. When Maria finished the final note, Mr. Park, the elder Korean executive, was the first to applaud with tears in his eyes, quickly followed by everyone present. It was applause born not just of technical admiration, but of genuine astonishment and authentic emotion. "Extraordinary!" exclaimed Mr. Park in English. "Your pronunciation is impeccable. Where did you learn our language with such precision?" Before Maria could answer, Robert partially regained his composure. His still pale face twisted into an expression of defensive anger. That proves nothing." He awkwardly fumbled with the dropped notes. "You must have overheard it. You set this trap up on purpose." Robert, one of his American partners, attempted to intervene. "No." Robert was out of control now. "This was clearly manipulation. She found out about our Korean investors and memorized a song to extort me." Maria remained silent, her dignity intact despite the blatant injustice. "But you promised the money," reminded Mr. Park, visibly disturbed by the host's behavior. "A man of honor keeps his word. I promised it for an authentic performance, not a cheap trick." Robert was furious. "Ms. Davies, escort this employee out. She is dismissed. Permanently." The housekeeper hesitated, clearly embarrassed, but approached Maria. "Please, ma'am, it's best if you go." Maria looked directly into Robert's eyes for the first time in 5 years. "It wasn't a trick, Mr. Sterling. My mother worked for a Korean family for many years. She taught me the songs." "Get out!" Robert yelled, pointing toward the exit. She retrieved her purse and walked out without looking back, head held high as the party descended into awkward silence. What no one realized was Marcus, one of the temporary waiters hired for the event, discreetly pocketing his cell phone after filming the entire scene. 3 days later, Maria was in the small living room of her rented apartment in Sunset Park, filling out unemployment forms. The wrongful termination guaranteed some rights, but she knew it would be difficult to keep up with the bills while looking for a new job. "Mom, look at this." Leo ran in, phone in hand. "It's you. You're everywhere." On the screen, A video showed Maria singing at the Sterling Manor, followed by Robert's refusal to pay the promised amount. The title read, "Millionaire humiliates cleaner and refuses to pay after she wins impossible challenge." Oh my God. How did this get on the internet? Maria took the device, stunned. "It has millions of views, Mom. People are so mad at that rich guy," Leo explained, excited by his mother's sudden fame. It was true. In just 72 hours, the video had spread like wildfire. The hashtag #PayTheCleaner dominated social media. Indignant comments multiplied every hour. Journalists tried to track Maria down for interviews. That same evening, her phone rang. It was Sarah Jenkins, a cultural reporter for the New York Ledger. "Ms. Lopez? I'm Sarah Jenkins. I'd like to talk about the incident at the Sterling Manor. But I'm not just interested in the scandal. I want to understand the story behind the music. How does a Brazilian-American cleaner know a Korean folk song so well? There's a story there that deserves to be told." Maria hesitated. Part of her just wanted to forget everything, discreetly find another job, and return to the invisibility that, despite being painful, felt safe. But another part, one that was beginning to awaken after years of dormancy, wanted to be heard. "Yes," she finally replied. "There is a story." The next day, in a simple cafe near her home, Maria told Sarah about her past. Her 8-year career as a music teacher, the community choir she directed, the concerts in churches and cultural spaces across Brooklyn. She spoke of her mother's illness and the medical debts, about Carlos, her husband, and the fatal accident. How, in less than 2 years, her life had completely collapsed. "But that doesn't explain the perfect Korean," Sarah observed, fascinated. Maria smiled lightly. "My mother, Donna Elena, worked as a cook for a Korean family in Flushing, Queens, for over 30 years. The Kims were different from most employers. Mrs. Kim especially treated my mother with respect. They developed a genuine friendship over the years. My mother learned the language, the songs, the culinary traditions. And she taught me all of it from a young age." 30 years is a long time, Sarah commented. "She must have become almost part of the family." "In a way, yes. When Mrs. Kim became seriously ill, my mother cared for her until the end, staying long past her working hours. It was a relationship of true affection, despite the social differences." Sarah asked a few more questions before promising, "I'm going to investigate further. There's something special about this story, something that goes beyond the viral video." In the following weeks, while the video continued to gain millions of views, Maria faced unexpected consequences. Anonymous threatening messages arrived on her cell phone. Her landlord insinuated that they might need to review the lease agreement. Online comments surfaced questioning her integrity, suggesting she had planned everything to extort money. "Maybe we should just move to another state," Maria commented to her children during dinner. "Start over somewhere else, away from all this." "But you didn't do anything wrong, Mom," protested Sophia, her 10-year-old daughter, with the simple, direct logic of children. "It was that rich man who promised and didn't pay up. Life remained difficult." Maria secured a few temporary cleaning jobs, but many employers recognized her from the video and dismissed her, fearing complications. Bills piled up. The children's school supplies, overdue payments, rent. Everything seemed impossible to manage. That's when Sarah Jenkins reappeared with a surprising discovery. "Maria, you need to see this, the journals," T said, showing old documents and photographs. "I spent weeks researching the Kim family records in Flushing, interviewing former neighbors, staff. And I found something extraordinary. The photos showed the house where Donna Elena had worked for decades. Immigration records for the Kim family. Newspaper clippings from 1975 about the adoption of a Brazilian-American boy by a Korean-American couple. Robert Sterling III was adopted by the Kim family when he was just 2 years old," Sarah explained carefully. "His biological mother abandoned him at St. Luke's Hospital. Mr. Kim, a textile executive, and his Korean wife legally adopted him." Maria stared at the photos, stunned. "You mean your mother worked in the house where Robert was raised?" According to the records and testimonies I collected, Donna Elena helped care for him in his early childhood years. Mrs. Kim died of heart problems when Robert was 5. After that, his adoptive father moved to a larger house, taking Elena along as a trusted employee. "That's impossible," Maria murmured, trying to assimilate the information. "There's more?" Sarah continued, showing a specific photograph she had found in the archives of the Korean Cultural Association. It was a time-yellowed image, 2 smiling women side by side, an elegant young Korean woman and a welcomingly smiling Latina woman. Each held a baby in her lap. In the background, a traditional style house common in old Flushing residences. "Mrs. Kim holding Robert," Sarah pointed out. "And Donna Elena holding you, only a few months old." Silent tears streamed down Maria's face. "I've never seen this picture. The song you sang at the party, Jongseon Ararang," Maria completed. "My mother always sang it to me to sleep. She said she learned it from—" Her voice failed with the realization. "From Mrs. Kim, who sang it to Robert every night," Sarah gently concluded. The revelation was overwhelming. The same lullaby had cradled 2 children in different rooms of that old house. The patron's adopted son and the cook's daughter. 2 lives that separated and followed radically different paths, only to collide decades later in a Greenwich mansion, under circumstances no one could have predicted. The next day, Sarah's article was published with the title, "The Song That Connects Destinies." The surprising story behind the viral "Pay the Cleaner." The text, deeply researched and sensitive, revealed the full connection between the families, explained the cultural significance of Jongseon Ararang, and recounted how 2 children, initially raised so close, had such disparate fates. The response from the sterling business empire was immediate and aggressive. Their lawyers filed a lawsuit against the newspaper for defamation and invasion of privacy. Sites that republished the article received threatening cease and desist notices. Sarah herself became the target of a discredit campaign on social media. "He's using all his power to silence the story," Sarah explained to Maria during a hurried meeting. "He even threatened to sue you for violation of confidentiality as a former employee." Maria felt the weight of social inequality once again. "I can't fight against that much power. Maybe we should stop here." "There are people willing to help," Sarah insisted. "This story has touched many people." It was true. In the following weeks, while Robert tried to suppress the case using his economic might, a surprising movement took shape. Maria's former colleagues from the community center started an online campaign. Former choir students shared videos singing in her honor. Music teachers across the country expressed solidarity. And then, something extraordinary happened. A group of renowned labor lawyers offered free legal representation. An online fundraiser to pay Maria what is due surpassed not only the promised $50,000 but reached an incredible $200,000 in just 2 weeks. Meanwhile, Robert's business began to feel the impact of the image crisis. The Korean investors, deeply offended by the episode, backed out of 2 major projects. Corporate clients canceled contracts, citing ethical incompatibility. In tense meetings, advisors and shareholders begged Robert to resolve the situation before the damage became irreparable. For months after the original incident, when both sides seemed entrenched in an unequal battle, Mark Stevens, a producer for a popular television program, made an unexpected proposal. "A special on social invisibility and recognition," he explained to Maria during a meeting. "With you as the host." Maria blinked, confused. "Me? I have no television experience." "Exactly why. Your authenticity is what we need. We want you to share your journey and interview others with similar stories." And in the final episode, he paused strategically, a live encounter with Robert Sterling. Maria's stomach clenched. "He would never agree." "He already has," Mark smiled. "The court mandated that he pay the $50,000 plus damages for emotional distress. His advisors convinced him that a controlled public appearance might help save his shredded reputation. It's either this or watch his empire crumble completely." That night, after the children were asleep, Maria faced her greatest internal conflict. Part of her wanted to simply accept the money silently and move on. Another part felt there was a greater purpose to all of it. She pulled a dusty box from the back of the closet, the few belongings left by her deceased mother. Among handwritten recipes and old letters, she found photographs she had never seen before. One showed her young mother, smiling next to Mrs. Kim. There was something in the way the two women looked at each other. A mutual respect, a genuine connection that transcended the employer-employee relationship. "What would you do, Mom?" she whispered to the image. The answer didn't come in words, but in a growing certainty in her chest. There was a story that needed to be told, not just for her and Robert, but for all the invisible people who sustained the luxury of others with labor that was rarely valued. The next morning, she called Mark. "I accept." In the weeks that followed, Maria worked intensely with the production team. The program, Invisible Lives, took shape, bringing to light the experiences of domestic workers, immigrants, community artists, people whose contributions were essential but rarely recognized or celebrated. During filming, something unexpected happened. Maria rediscovered her calling as an educator, her ability to listen with empathy, to ask meaningful questions, to create connections between seemingly distinct stories. It all emerged naturally before the cameras. It wasn't just a television program, but a form of social education. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Robert Sterling lived his own torment. The empire he had built with such determination showed increasingly visible cracks. Cancelled contracts, alienated partners, plummeting stocks. Even more painful were the messages from former staff at the Kim house, revealing how he had been a sweet, sensitive child before hardening under his adoptive father's rigid upbringing after his Korean mother's death. The memory of Mrs. Kim, which he had buried so deeply, resurfaced in painful fragments. The lullaby, the smell of homemade kimchi in the kitchen, the Korean stories before bed, recollections he had replaced with emblems of material success and power. On the night of the final episode recording, the studio was completely full. In the audience, Maria's children watched nervously alongside Sarah, former teacher colleagues, and even some of the old choir kids. Also present were dozens of domestic workers, many of whom had never been inside a television studio before. Robert arrived escorted by security and advisors, his tense face revealing sleepless nights. He seemed smaller somehow, not physically, but as if some of his imposing presence had been drained away. The lights dimmed, cameras positioned, the theme music began to play. Maria walked to the center of the stage under warm applause. "Good evening," she began, her voice serene but firm. "For 5 weeks, we have talked about invisibility, about how certain lives are considered less important, less worthy of attention and respect. Today, we conclude our journey with the story that started it all." Screens in the background displayed the viral video, the challenge, the song, the refusal. 5 months later, the images still provoked intense reactions in the audience. "Please welcome Robert Sterling III." The businessman entered to a tense silence, punctuated by a few hostile murmurs that Maria subtly signaled to stop. When both sat across from each other, the contrast was evident. She, simple and dignified. He, clearly uncomfortable despite the expensive suit. "Mr. Sterling, thank you for accepting our invitation," Maria said formally. "Thank you for the opportunity," he replied mechanically, the words clearly rehearsed. What followed was a dialogue very different from what the audience expected. There were no dramatic accusations or explosive confrontations. Instead, Maria led a carefully constructed conversation about memory, identity, and responsibility. "Do you remember the song I sang that night?" Robert hesitated visibly. "Yes. You recognized it immediately, didn't you? That's why you reacted that way." He nodded, avoiding looking directly at her. "Why did that specific song disturb you so much?" Robert seemed to struggle internally. His lawyers had instructed safe answers, but something in that moment, perhaps the dignity in Maria's gaze, perhaps the weight of months of forced self-scrutiny, broke through his carefully constructed defenses. "My adoptive mother used to sing it to me," he finally admitted, his voice lower than usual. "Mrs. Kim, I have few memories of her. She died when I was just 5, but I remember that song every night before bed. A respectful silence enveloped the studio. Do you know now that my mother worked in the house where you grew up? I found out after the report, Robert answered, tense. My lawyers confirmed the information. And do you understand what that means? That it's a remarkable coincidence. He attempted in one last resistance. No, Maria gently shook her head. It means we were connected by something much greater than money or social standing. She signaled, and a production assistant brought her an envelope. I'd like to show you something. Maria removed the antique photograph and handed it to Robert. The cameras captured the exact moment he recognized it. The initial shock, the confusion, a sudden pallor. My adoptive mother, he murmured, touching the image with visibly trembling fingers. And my mother, Donna Elena, Maria completed, holding you and me, respectively, when we were babies. How is this possible? Robert seemed genuinely perplexed. Our mothers were friends, Maria explained, her voice thick with contained emotion. They rocked us to sleep with the same song because they wanted us to grow up knowing what care is, what love without boundaries is. Your adoptive mother taught the song to my mother, who taught it to me, and I sang it to you that night, completing a decades-long circle. The audience was in absolute silence, many with tears in their eyes. Robert stared at the photograph as if he could extract long-lost truths from it. But you chose to forget where you came from, Maria continued, without accusation in her voice, only a melancholic observation. You chose to humiliate people like my mother, like me, to assert your place in the world. Robert raised his gaze from the photo, and for the first time since the confrontation began, his eyes met Maria's directly. I was so afraid, he admitted, his voice almost a whisper, so afraid of not being enough, of being discarded again. I built walls so high around myself that I forgot who was on the other side. These were not the words prepared by his advisors. It was a genuine, painfully honest confession. When you sang that song, he continued, now with tears he didn't try to hide. It was as if all my defenses collapsed at once, as if my adoptive mother was right there, reminding me of who I should have become. Maria reached out her hand, in a gesture that surprised everyone, including herself. I'm not here for the money, Mr. Sterling. I'm here because our story deserves to be told. Because all the invisible women who clean, cook, care, they all deserve to be seen. Robert hesitated before accepting the gesture, briefly holding Maria's hand. I am sorry, he said, his voice trembling, deeply regretful, not just for what I did to you, but for everything I've become over the years. The rest of the program unfolded with an emotional intensity that transcended mere television spectacle. Robert publicly committed not only to paying the promised amount and the court-ordered damages, but also to fundamentally reviewing his business practices and personal relationships. When the cameras were finally turned off and the audience began to disperse, Robert approached Maria again backstage. May I keep a copy of that photograph? He asked, indicating the image of the two mothers with the babies. Of course, Maria replied simply. It belongs to both of us, after all. Thank you. He hesitated, as if wanting to say more, but ended up just nodding respectfully before leaving. And you? Have you ever noticed how many invisible people are part of your daily life? That woman who cleans your office before you arrive, the delivery driver who brings your lunch, the transit worker who gets you home? How many extraordinary stories are hidden behind those faces we rarely notice? If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and leave a like. In the comments, share only the word visibility and help this message reach even more people. 1 year later, the old building of the Beacon Community Center and School, closed for so long, now displayed a freshly painted facade and a new name, the Elena Kim Cultural Center, a tribute to the two women who, decades earlier, had planted seeds of humanity in unlikely ground. Within its revitalized walls, children and teenagers from Sunset Park learned music, languages, and arts. with part of the settlement money and significant donations, including a substantial anonymous contribution that everyone suspected came from Robert Sterling. Maria had rebuilt not just a building, but a dream. Professor Maria! A group of small children ran toward her as she organized sheet music. "Are we going to sing that Korean song today?" She smiled. "Jongseon Ararang? That's the one. The magic song." Maria laughed softly. The song had become almost legendary among the students. The melody that transformed their teacher's life and, by extension, theirs too. In the main hall, now equipped with a donated piano and various instruments, the walls displayed framed photographs. Among them, enlarged and restored, the image of the two women with their babies occupied a prominent place. Maria's life had changed radically. After the special program, invitations surfaced for lectures, workshops, even a monthly column in a major newspaper about invisible workers. She accepted some, refused others, always prioritizing the cultural center and her children. Leo, now 13, showed talent for composition. Sophia, at 10, followed in her mother's footsteps with a promising voice. As for Robert Sterling, the transformation was more complex and gradual. His business reputation had suffered considerable damage, and some major contracts were never recovered. But something unexpected emerged from the ashes of his former self. 6 months after the program, he had created the Mrs. Kim Foundation, dedicated to ensuring dignified conditions, continuing education, and medical assistance for domestic workers and their families. It wasn't just a marketing project. Robert had personally rewritten policies, moved resistant executives, and begun participating in serious discussions about corporate social responsibility. On that specific afternoon, almost exactly 1 year after the televised confrontation, Maria received an unexpected visit. Robert Sterling, dressed in casual clothes instead of his usual Italian suit, paused hesitantly at the entrance of the cultural center. "May I come in?" he asked with a formality that barely concealed his nervousness. Maria nodded, surprised. "Of course." He walked through the space, observing the children, the instruments, the photographs on the walls. "What you've built here is impressive." "Thank you," Maria replied. "What brings you here today?" Robert took an envelope from his pocket. "I found a few more photographs in the company archives. I thought perhaps you might want them for the center." They were images of the Kim family from the 70s, including several with Donna Elena. Preserved memories of a shared past. "And I came to ask," he continued after a moment of visible hesitation, "if I can contribute in a more direct way, not just financially, maybe mentoring the teenagers interested in entrepreneurship, or connecting them with companies for future internships." Maria observed his face carefully, looking for signs of the old Robert. What she found was something different. Not a complete transformation, but a man genuinely trying to rebuild himself, step by step. "I think we can talk about that," she finally replied. That night, as she did every Friday, Maria gathered her students for the song circle in the inner courtyard. Seated in a circle, small faces watched her with admiration as she adjusted her guitar. "What song are we singing today, Professor?" asked a bright-eyed girl. Maria gently strummed the strings, smiling. "Jongseon Ararang. That same one. The magical song." And as her voice rose, carrying the ancient melody that had connected lives separated by social chasms, something greater than a simple song filled the night air. It was the promise that no life needed to remain invisible. That dignity was not a privilege, but a fundamental right. That even in the most improbable stories, humanity could triumph over indifference. Somewhere in New York, other women like her mother were still cleaning homes, cooking meals, caring for children who were not their own. But perhaps, just perhaps, stories like Maria's could inspire a closer look, a more genuine recognition, a world where human worth was not measured by bank accounts or social standing. Justice, after all, had arrived not just in the form of a one lawsuit or a deposited check, but in the profound transformation of how a small part of society began to value every life that sustained it. And you, dear friend who follows us, how many times have you failed to see a complete person behind a uniform? How many extraordinary stories have been lost because we didn't give ourselves the chance to know who the people serving us truly are? If this reflection touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any inspiring stories, and leave your like as a sign of support. In the comments, share the word humanity, showing that you understand that true wealth lies in recognizing the value of every person. We will be back soon with more stories that will touch your soul and inspire transformations. Thank you for joining us until here. Note, this is a work of fiction inspired by real social issues. Any resemblance to specific people or situations is purely coincidental. The more Maria delved into the work of the Cultural Center, the more she realized the impact of the shared stories. Every music class opened doors that many felt were permanently closed to children from marginalized communities. Every performance by the youth choir she formed broke invisible barriers between worlds that seemed destined to remain separate. On a particularly busy afternoon, Sarah, the journalist who had revealed the connection between Maria and Robert, appeared at the Cultural Center with exciting news. The documentary about your story has been selected for the International Human Rights Film Festival, she announced, barely containing her excitement. And what's more, 3 international TV networks want to buy the broadcast rights. Maria smiled, still not completely accustomed to the attention her story continued to receive. I don't know if I'm ready for that much exposure, Sarah. It's not just about you, the journalist explained. It's about all the Mariahs who remain invisible out there. Your story is inspiring concrete change. Did you know 2 congresspeople introduced a bill on domestic worker dignity inspired by your case? The impact extended far beyond what Maria could initially imagine. Former students of the old community choir, now young women, had returned to offer volunteer classes. Companies were beginning to implement appreciation and qualification programs for general service employees. A major university created specific scholarships for domestic workers who wished to resume their studies. Meanwhile, Robert Sterling faced his own journey of transformation, which was not always easy or linear. In board meetings, his new policies on employee appreciation often met fierce resistance from other executives. "Have you gone mad?" questioned one of the oldest directors. "Raising wages, offering career paths for cleaning staff? That will cut into our profits. And how many Mariahs did we destroy along the way to those profits?" Robert responded firmly. "How much talent did we waste because we couldn't see people beyond their job titles?" The transformation wasn't just professional. In his house, now much simpler than the old mansion he had sold, Robert maintained a small Korean-style shrine with a photograph of his adoptive mother. Gradually, he reconnected with his roots, learning the language he had rejected, studying the culture he had denied as part of himself for so long. 6 months after his initial visit to the Cultural Center, Robert surprised Maria with a formal proposal. "We're organizing a cultural exchange program with South Korea," he explained. "Young musicians from underserved communities will have the opportunity to study in Seoul for a semester. I'd like the Cultural Center to be our first partner." Maria carefully analyzed the project before accepting. Their collaboration remained cautious, built gradually on a foundation of mutual respect, not immediate friendship. It was a complex relationship, neither fully reconciled nor irreparably divided. On the night of the first audition for the exchange program, the Cultural Center was packed. Anxious parents, nervous children, and a panel of judges that included professional musicians and Korean language teachers. Among the candidates was Leo, Maria's son, now 14. His talent for composition had evolved significantly over the past year. "I'm nervous, Mom," he confessed while waiting his turn. "That's normal, son. But remember, regardless of the result, the important thing is the courage to try." When Leo took the small stage, he presented an original composition that blended elements of Brazilian music with traditional Korean melodies. It was a sonic bridge between worlds, between stories, between generations. At the end of the presentation, Robert, sitting discreetly in the back of the room, had tears in his eyes, not just because of the beauty of the music, but because of everything it represented. Somewhere in the past, 2 women held 2 babies and sang the same song, dreaming of a future where both could flourish. On the 2-year anniversary of the Cultural Center, a special celebration was organized. The youth choir would perform a bilingual repertoire, including Zhongxian Ararang, in an original arrangement created by the students themselves. In the front row, side by side but with a respectful distance, Maria and Robert watched what they had built. Not together, but starting from a connection that defied simple explanation. "They are the future our mothers wished for us," Maria commented softly. Robert nodded. "A future where no one has to be invisible for others to shine." When the children began to sing the ancient folk song that had changed so many lives, the melody seemed to carry not just musical notes, but the transformative power of recognition, of seeing and being truly seen as a complete human being. Maria's journey, from invisibility to the stage, from humiliation to reclaimed dignity, was not just an individual story of overcoming. It was a powerful reminder of how many other extraordinary stories remain hidden in people we pass daily without truly seeing. And you, dear viewer who accompanies us, how many times have you failed to see the complete person behind a uniform? How many extraordinary stories were lost because we didn't give ourselves the chance to know who the people serving us daily truly are? If this reflection touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell to not miss any inspiring stories, and leave your like as AF or M of support. In the comments, share the word humanity, showing that you understand that true wealth is in recognizing the value of every person. We'll be back soon with more stories that will touch your soul and inspire transformations. Thank you so much for being with us until here. Note: this is a work of fiction intended for social reflection. Any resemblance to real people or situations is unintentional coincidence.